lived and worked in the city. Now, Minsk is the capital of independent Belarus, but David Stern has been finding out that people there have long memories.
Lee Harvey Oswald. His name can evoke a range of emotions. Anger among those who believe him to be the lone gunman who assassinated President Kennedy. Militant disbelief among those who don't. And perhaps most of all, a yearning among those who want to know what exactly happened during those fateful November days in Dallas, when a young president was murdered and his accused assassin was then himself gunned down 2 days later. What I didn't count on was that his name would inspire warm memories. I'd come to Minsk to follow in the footsteps of Oswald, who had lived here for 2.5 years after having defected to the Soviet Union in October 1959. I was not hoping to find the smoking gun, so to speak, conclusive proof that Oswald was in fact Kennedy's killer. No, too many people had sifted through the details of Oswald's life, like gold prospectors in a stream, and failed to come up with any nugget of evidence. I did not expect to be any different. What I wanted was some clue to the man himself, something that would fill out his character, create a person in place of that two-dimensional image that many of us have seen, the one of Oswald, crumpled over and crying out in pain as he is shot in the stomach by the nightclub owner, Jack Ruby. Oswald, a 20-year-old former Marine, moved to the USSR because he said he was a Marxist. Soviet authorities did not trust him, however, and initially rejected his request to defect. After he made a half-hearted suicide attempt in his Moscow hotel room, the Soviets changed their mind and allowed him to stay. They sent him to Minsk, a distant provincial capital, which might as well have been Siberia. He was assigned a job at a radio and TV factory and allocated a one-room apartment in the center of town. I visited this flat, which commands a striking fourth-floor view of one of Minsk's main parks and its opera house. The street where the building is located is called Communist Street, just as it was in Oswald's day. In fact, many things in Minsk haven't changed since the Soviet era. Belarus may be independent, but it's still under an authoritarian system. The KGB keeps a tight lid on developments, and is still called the KGB. All of this made it easier to form an image of Oswald, walking the streets, going to his factory job, and meeting acquaintances. One of his best friends was a medical student named Ernst Titovets. Titovets knew English well and attached himself to the young American. They attended concerts and dances together, and Titovets played Cupid's helper when Oswald met his future wife, Marina, whom Titovets described as attractive in a raw, sexual sort of way. "I just like the guy," said Titovets, who is now a spry, 74-year-old neuro-researcher. He added that Oswald once saved him from being hit by a car, and said that Oswald had a sharp sense of humor. He loved to laugh and play practical jokes. But Titovets said that Oswald was obviously troubled, even though he tried to hide his emotions. He was stoical, and he was always clean, well-dressed, and put together no matter what, Titovets said. I asked, "What did you think when you heard that Oswald had allegedly killed Kennedy and then himself was shot?" I couldn't believe my ears. I deeply believe he was innocent. He was incapable of killing anybody, Titovets said. This was in fact a refrain that I heard throughout my time in Minsk. No one believed that Oswald could have assassinated the U.S. president. This of course proves nothing. Oswald never fully opened up to anyone, and in any case, it's human nature to believe only the best about your friends. Still, it was somewhat unnerving to hear so many good things about a person whose name is associated with one of the most infamous acts of our era. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. I met one of Oswald's former workmates, Vladimir Zhidovich, at a local cafe. He, like everyone else, told how Oswald was a good guy, and he couldn't imagine him a murderer. At the end of the interview, he asked a favor. If I ever go to Dallas, he asked, would I lay some flowers on Oswald's grave, from him and the other colleagues at the factory? The request took me aback. I didn't know what to say. On the one hand, This was Oswald we were talking about, a man who may have slain a political leader and, without a doubt, altered world history. On the other hand, Zhidovich's appeal came from the heart. He obviously cared for Oswald. I don't usually turn down entreaties when they are that sincere. And even now, I haven't made up my mind what to do.
David Stern with an unusual moral dilemma to deal with. This is from our own correspondent on the BBC World Service. In the capital of Vietnam, Petrock Trelawney is also pausing for thought. He's mulling over the future of a monument, but he better get a move on. The beloved old bridge that holds Hanoi together may be crumbling under his feet, but the traffic and the commerce across it wait for no man.
There are not many pedestrians on Lang Bien Bridge. A man in a Panama hat walks briskly as if he has an important meeting. He's wearing a pair of shorts made of cotton printed with headlines from the London Times. An old lady sporting a non la, the classic conical Vietnamese hat, walks a third of the way across and then turns back. I'm the only other person on foot, getting strange looks from the scores of motorcyclists that speed past me every minute. Building work started on Lang Bien Bridge at the very end of the 19th century. The colonial government built it as a way of showing the people of Vietnam that they were here to stay. 1.5 miles across, it was one of the most spectacular bridges in the world when it opened in 1903. As my walk begins, I cross over the reclaimed banks of the Red River, mineral-rich land planted by dozens of small-scale market gardeners. One of the farmers has built an impromptu picnic area for himself and his friends with a faded Coca-Cola umbrella and a few rattan chairs. Pedestrians must negotiate their way along a narrow walkway made of thin concrete slabs resting in steel frames. Where the frames have rusted or the concrete chipped, you get a clear and vertiginous view of what's happening below. Soon I'm above the river, with its constant flow of barges filled with sand. They lie improbably low in the water as they're towed downstream. Halfway across, a sandy, overgrown island that provides a refuge for some of the city's destitute citizens. I've just passed the ramps down to the island when I hear a strange thudding sound. The bridge begins to vibrate and then shake. A train rumbles along the track in the middle, dirty exhaust belching from its diesel engine. This is the railway line that links Hanoi with the port city of Haiphong, meaning the bridge was once strategically vital, first helping swell the economic prosperity of Indochina, and then later as a supply route for beleaguered French soldiers fighting Vietnamese nationalists. In time, it became key to communist North Vietnam's fate, the subject of patriotic songs and poems, and an all-too-visible target for American bombing raids. While some of the bridge is original, much of it has been rebuilt since the war. It looks battered all over, a riveted ragtag of different styles and materials. Today, the train is only carrying passengers. Most of the freight seems to be balanced on the back of motorcycles. A lady carries bunches of the Thai basil used to garnish bowls of pho, the national noodle dish. A man carries reams of white A4 paper, several of them torn open, the sheets flapping in the breeze. There are loads of pineapples, electrical equipment, anonymous boxes. One rider loses control of his cargo of a dozen empty plastic water cooler bottles. Horns blow as bikes swerve out the way of the loose containers. Some of the riders are out for pleasure. A smartly dressed young couple, the woman riding side saddle, an older man going against the flow, one hand on the wheel, the other clutching a fresh baguette. I've come at a quiet time. At the weekends and at sunset, Hanoians flock to the bridge and photograph each other against the backdrop of their city. The handrails are covered in declarations of love made in white correction fluid. Some are more ominous than others. "I'll be waiting for you," one person has written. "Tell me why," asks another. The future of this much-cherished landmark is up for debate. 6 bridges cross the river now, and there's talk of tunnels as well. Growing wealth means the traffic flow on the city's roads gets ever busier. Vietnamese railways want to reroute their track. One architect won support for his idea to turn the bridge into a museum covered in glass, with the central island made into a pleasure garden. At the end of last year, Vietnamese officials even asked the French if they would help finance the restoration of the bridge. Walking back towards the city, I try to count the tower blocks through the thick haze. 15, 20, maybe a few more, but unlike Saigon and Bangkok, this is still a relatively low-rise city, colonial-era buildings seeming to define the shape of the skyline. Many of those old buildings have been brought back to life, the roofs fixed, walls painted yellow, green shutters restored. While over the fast-flowing Red River, the great Lang Bian Bridge waits patiently for its loving makeover.
Petrop Trelawney. Now we've just time to take you on a magical mystery tour of Los Angeles. I say that because the hidden staircases of this city are magical. They have a